I didn't realize my mom had been breaking into my apartment the first time it happened. I told myself it was coincidence. Fatigue, my imagination playing tricks on me, but then I came home to lights I never turned on, food I never cooked, and that sickening feeling that someone had been inside my space without asking. People say mothers cross lines because they love too much. But what no one tells you is how love can turn into control when it refuses to listen. My name is Olivia, and at 29, I believed moving out meant freedom, a locked door, a life that finally belonged to me. I was wrong, because no matter how far I moved, my mom still believed my life was hers to manage. And the night I vanished without telling her wasn't rebellion. It was the only way I could protect myself. And the moment she finally had to face consequences she never thought would reach her. For as long as I can remember, privacy was something that belonged to other families. In our house, doors were suggestions. Boundaries were moods. And my mother, Karen, believed love gave her unlimited access to every part of me. She never knocked on my bedroom door. Not once. She would push it open while I was changing, studying, crying, always smiling like she was doing nothing wrong. "What are you hiding now, Olivia?" she'd ask, flipping through my notebooks, her voice light, almost playful. "Nothing." I learned early that saying nothing kept the peace. If I locked the door, she'd sigh loudly in the hallway. "If you don't trust your own mother, who will you trust?" So I stopped locking it. She read my messages by accident. It nodded. She reorganized my things, to help. She corrected my feelings for my own good. When I cried, she called me sensitive. When I pulled away, she called me ungrateful. After my dad left when I was 12, her attention tightened like a knot. I became her world and her project. Everyone said she was just protective. No one noticed how small I was becoming inside that love. By the time I grew up, I didn't know how to ask for space without feeling guilty. I didn't know how to say no without apologizing. So when I finally moved into my own apartment years later, I truly believed I had crossed some invisible line into adulthood. I believed distance would fix everything. I didn't yet understand that for my mother, distance was just another boundary waiting to be crossed. Moving into my first apartment felt like stepping into a life that finally belonged to me. It wasn't big. One bedroom, one bathroom, a narrow kitchen with creaky cabinets and a small balcony overlooking the street. But every inch of it was mine. The first night, I sat on the floor eating takeout straight from the box, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. No footsteps, no voices, just silence that didn't feel heavy for once. I slept with my door locked, and no one knocked. For weeks I breathed differently. Slower, deeper. I arranged my books by color instead of size. I left dishes in the sink overnight without hearing a sigh of disappointment. I stayed up late, woke up late, lived by my own rhythm. When my mom called, I kept the conversations short. "I'm fine," I said. "Work is busy." She asked for a spare key. I laughed it off. "Why would you need that?" "In case of emergencies," she replied quickly. "I'm your mother." I didn't give her one. That was my first mistake. The first time I noticed something was off, it was small enough to ignore. I came home from work and found the lights on in the living room. I assumed I'd forgotten to turn them off. Then there was food in the fridge I didn't remember buying. Homemade soup. Labeled containers. Familiar handwriting. I told myself she must have dropped it off earlier, and I just hadn't noticed. It was easier to believe that than to admit the truth creeping in around me, that my freedom was more fragile than I wanted to admit. I still believed this place was mine. I still believed a locked door meant something. I didn't yet understand that my mother had never seen doors as barriers, only as obstacles that could be moved if she pushed hard enough. The first time my mom let herself into my apartment, she acted like it was normal. I came home from work and nearly dropped my bag when I saw her standing in my kitchen. An apron tied around her waist, like she belonged there. "Oh, good, you're home," she said brightly. "I was just about to start dinner." "Mom?" My voice came out smaller than I meant it to. "How did you get in?" She waved her hand, already turning back to the stove. "Your landlord let me in. I told him you weren't answering and I was worried." Worried? That word slipped into the room and settled between us like something fragile I wasn't allowed to touch. I should have said no. I should have told her to leave. Instead, I stood there, watching her move my things, rearrange my cabinets, hum to herself as if this were still my childhood home. Dad would have called it keeping the peace. I called it temporary. After that, the visits didn't stop. They just got quieter. Containers shifted places. My mail stacked neatly instead of scattered. Laundry folded the way she liked it. Once, I found my laptop open on the coffee table. A browser window blinking softly. "What were you doing on my computer?" I asked her later on the phone. She laughed. "Relax, Olivia. I just checked that you were paying your bills. You work too much. You forget things." I didn't forget. I just wasn't allowed to prove it. When I tried to explain how it made me feel, she sighed deeply. "I can't believe you're turning your own mother into a problem." That sentence hit harder than anything else. Suddenly, I was no longer a daughter asking for space. I was a difficult woman creating drama. Every time I tried to draw a line, she stepped over it and called it love. And every time I let it slide, a little more of my apartment stopped feeling like mine. By the time I realized how often she'd been there without me, the footprints were everywhere on my floors, in my routines, and deep inside my sense of safety. I wasn't just losing control of my space. I was losing the ability to trust my own instincts. The night everything finally broke, I wasn't angry. I was tired. I came home late, kicked off my shoes, and dropped onto the couch, ready for silence. Instead, my eyes landed on my coffee table and my chest tightened. My laptop was open. Not asleep, not locked, open. Lines of text scrolled halfway down the screen. A draft I'd been working on earlier that week. Tabs I didn't recognize. Settings I knew I hadn't touched. Someone hadn't just passed by. They had stopped, read, stayed. My hands shook as I closed the laptop. For a moment I considered pretending I hadn't seen it, pretending I could still live like this. Then I picked up my phone and called my mom. She answered on the first ring. "Oh, sweetheart," she said warmly. "I was just about to call you. Did you go into my apartment today?" I asked. There was a pause, just long enough. "Yes," she said calmly. "I was worried. You didn't respond to my texts. You went through my computer," I said. My voice cracked. I glanced. She corrected. "You looked stressed. I wanted to make sure you weren't falling behind." That word again. Corrected. "You lied to my landlord to get inside," I said. "That's not lying," she replied sharply. "That's being a mother. If you isolate yourself, someone has to step in." Something inside me went cold. I ended the call without saying goodbye and slid down against the couch, my knees pulled to my chest. Every memory I'd buried came rushing back, the open doors, the read journals, the constant feeling of being monitored. This wasn't new. This was a pattern that had never stopped. The next day, I sat in a therapist's office, staring at the carpet as I told the story out loud for the first time. When I finished, she leaned forward gently. "Olivia," she said, "this isn't concern. This is control." The words landed heavily, but they didn't hurt. They clarified. "Your home isn't emotionally safe," she continued. "And boundaries won't work if they aren't respected. As in notices, and sort of quais, mater in an elater." I walked out of that office, knowing something irreversible had happened. I couldn't unsee it anymore. And once you name the truth, staying silent starts to feel like self-betrayal. Once the truth settled in, it didn't explode. It sank. It sat heavy in my chest, following me from room to room, whispering the same thought over and over again. This will never stop. I tried, for a few days, to act normal. I went to work, I answered emails. I smiled at coworkers who had no idea my own home no longer felt safe to me. But every time my phone buzzed, my stomach tightened. Every unfamiliar sound outside my door made my heart jump. I stopped sleeping. At night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment I had ignored, every excuse I had made for her. I realized something that terrified me more than her behavior itself. If I stayed, I would keep adapting. I would keep shrinking. I would keep convincing myself this was normal. My therapist's words echoed in my head, louder each day. Distance isn't punishment, it's protection. That was when I understood something painful and freeing at the same time. I didn't need a better conversation. I needed an exit. One night, long after midnight, I opened my laptop and typed the words I'd been afraid to even think. Secure apartment buildings with controlled access. As I scrolled, my hands trembled. Cameras, key cards, on-site staff, buildings where no one could talk their way inside by claiming to be a worried mother. For the first time, privacy felt like something I could choose, not beg for. I scheduled a viewing for the next morning and told my mom I'd be in meetings all day. The lie sat uncomfortably on my tongue, but not as uncomfortably as the truth would have. The building was downtown, clean and quiet. The lobby smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. The receptionist asked for my ID before even smiling. That alone made my chest loosen. The unit was small but bright. Tall windows, solid doors, a balcony that locked from the inside. I stood there longer than necessary, imagining my life without footsteps that weren't mine. I signed the lease before doubt could catch up with me. The move had to be secret. I knew that with terrifying clarity. If I told her, she'd cry. If she cried, I'd freeze. And if I froze, I'd stay. I asked my friends Emily and Jason for help without explaining everything. They didn't ask questions. They just showed up, hoodies pulled tight, voices low, like they understood this wasn't just a move, it was an escape. We packed at night. Every sound felt louder than it should have. Tape ripping, boxes sliding across the floor, my own breathing in my ears. I made decisions I never thought I'd make. I left behind furniture my mom had insisted I take. Mugs she bought for my place. Photo frames she'd chosen because they looked more like home to her than to me. I wanted nothing she could use as a reason to return. At 2 a.m, the moving truck idled quietly outside. Each trip down the hallway felt like a countdown. When the last box was loaded, I stood alone in the empty apartment. No furniture. No photos. No traces of her. I locked the door for the final time and slid the spare key one she had once waved proudly like a badge of access into an envelope addressed to the landlord. No explanation. No forwarding address. When the truck pulled away, I didn't feel brave. I felt terrified. But beneath the fear was something new. Something fragile and powerful. Relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't asking for space. I was taking it. And I disappeared. For 3 days after I moved, I kept my phone face down. I didn't block her. I didn't delete anything. I just went silent. In my new apartment, silence felt different. It wasn't heavy. It didn't press against my chest. Every sound came from me, the click of the lock, the hum of the air vent, my own footsteps across the floor. I slept through the night for the first time in years. On the morning of the 4th day, I turned my phone over. The screen lit up like a warning flare. Missed calls. Dozens of them. Voicemails stacked one after another. Texts that grew more frantic the further I scrolled. Olivia, answer me. This isn't funny. Where are you? You're scaring me. Then came messages from numbers I didn't recognize. This is your neighbor. Your mom is here. Something's wrong. My chest tightened. Before I could process any of it, my phone rang again. Unknown number. Something in me said, "Pick up." "Is this Olivia Turner?" a calm voice asked. "Yes. This is Officer Grant with the police department. Are you safe right now?" The word safe hit me harder than I expected. "Yes," I said slowly. "I am. I'm calling because there was an incident at your former apartment. Your mother attempted to enter the unit. The current tenants believed it was a break-in." I closed my eyes. "Of course they did. She told them she was worried about you." The officer continued carefully. "We need you to come down to the station to clarify a few things." My hands were shaking, but my voice stayed steady. "I'll be there." The police station smelled like stale coffee and disinfectant. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Too bright, too unforgiving. When I walked into the small conference room, I saw her. My mother sat at the table, mascara streaked down her cheeks, clutching a tissue like it was proof of her innocence. Her shoulders shook as she cried loudly enough for anyone passing by to hear. The moment she saw me, she jumped to her feet. "Oh my God, Olivia," she cried. "Where have you been? We thought you were dead." Dead. The word felt dramatic, heavy, unfair. "I'm fine," I said quietly, stopping a few feet away. "You shouldn't have gone to my apartment." Her face twisted instantly from relief to accusation. "How could you do this to me?" she demanded. "You disappeared. You didn't tell me anything." An officer stepped into the room, calm and composed. "Let's all sit down." My mother collapsed back into her chair, sobbing. I remained standing until the officer nodded for me to sit across from her. "Miss Turner," the officer began, "your mother reported you missing. We need to confirm your well-being." "I wasn't missing," I said. "I moved." My mother's head snapped up. You moved? Her voice broke. Without telling me? Yes. You can't just vanish like that, she said sharply. I'm your mother. The officer held up a hand. Ma'am, your daughter is an adult. She's allowed to relocate without notifying anyone. My mother shook her head in disbelief. I was worried. She isolates herself. She works too much. I had to check on her. You attempted to enter a residence that is no longer hers. The officer replied evenly. Witnesses report you tried to access the unit without permission. That's not what happened, my mother snapped. I was trying to help her. I even climbed onto the balcony because I thought she might be inside. The room went quiet. I felt something inside me harden. You lied to my landlord, I said, my voice low but clear. You told him I was unstable so he'd let you in. You read my private work. You went through my things. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. I did those things because I love you, she said. If you didn't push me away, none of this would have happened. The officer leaned forward slightly. Miss Turner, love does not give someone the right to enter another adult's home without consent. That is trespassing. The word hung in the air, trespassing. My mother's lips trembled. I can't believe you're involving the police. I met her eyes, my heart pounding. I didn't involve them, I said softly. You did. Silence filled the room, thick and unavoidable. After a moment, the officer slid a document across the table. Given the circumstances, I recommend a formal boundary agreement. This documents expectations going forward. My mother stared at the paper like it was a punishment. I took a breath. You will not come to my home, I said. We meet only in public places. You do not access my mail, my accounts, or my personal belongings ever. Her voice cracked. That's extreme. No, I replied. That's adulthood. Anyone is now any size. For a long moment she didn't move. Then, slowly, she signed. When the pen lifted from the paper, something inside me finally loosened something that had been tight for as long as I could remember. As I stood to leave, my mother whispered, I miss when you needed me. I paused at the door. You can still be in my life, I said quietly. You just can't control it. And for the first time, she had no argument left. After the police station, I expected everything to explode again. That's how my life had always worked. Calm never lasted. Silence was usually just a pause before something worse. So when nothing happened, my body didn't know how to respond. For days, I moved through my new apartment carefully, like someone staying in a stranger's home. I double-checked the locks even though I knew no one else had the key. I jumped at unexpected sounds. I kept my phone within reach at all times, half expecting another crisis to pull me back into old patterns. But the calls didn't come. In the quiet, I began to notice things I had never had space to notice before. Mornings felt different. I woke up without that familiar tightness in my chest. I made coffee slowly, standing by the window, watching the city wake up below me. No one rearranged my kitchen. No one commented on my choices. That absence felt strange. And then, gradually, it felt good. My mom waited almost a week before reaching out. The message was short and careful, as if she wasn't sure what language she was allowed to use anymore. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time before answering. In the past, I would have rushed to respond, afraid that silence meant punishment. This time, I took a breath. We can meet somewhere public, I typed back. We chose a cafe near downtown. Small tables, big windows, people everywhere. When she walked in, I noticed how unsure she looked, scanning the room before spotting me. For the first time, she didn't sit too close. She didn't touch my arm. I don't know where I went wrong, she said quietly after a moment. I didn't rush to reassure her. I didn't soften the truth. You went wrong when you stopped seeing me as a separate person, I said. My voice didn't shake. She swallowed hard. I was scared of losing you. I was scared of never being myself, I replied. There was no dramatic apology, no sudden transformation. But something had shifted. She listened more than she spoke. And when she did speak, her words were slower, more measured, as if she was learning new rules in real time. We continued like that meeting only in public, keeping conversations short at first. She didn't ask for my address. She didn't show up unannounced. Every small act of restraint felt unfamiliar and necessary. Meanwhile, my own life began to expand in quiet ways. I slept through the night without waking in panic. I stopped checking my phone compulsively. I caught myself humming while cooking, a sound that surprised me every time it happened. In therapy, I talked about guilt, the kind that lingers even when you've done nothing wrong. I learned that setting boundaries doesn't mean you love less. It means you love without losing yourself. I wasn't fully healed. Some days, fear still crept in uninvited, but it no longer ruled me. For the first time, I wasn't living in reaction to my mother's emotions. I was living in response to my own. Oh, and that made all the difference. Looking back now, I understand something I couldn't see back then. Leaving wasn't about punishing my mom. It wasn't about proving a point. And it definitely wasn't about winning. It was about survival. For years, I believed love meant endurance. That if I just tried harder, explained myself better, stayed quieter, things would eventually improve. I thought being a good daughter meant sacrificing parts of myself piece by piece. I was wrong. What changed my life wasn't the move itself. It was the moment someone outside my family, someone neutral, looked at the situation and said, "This isn't okay." The police didn't take sides. They didn't judge intentions. They looked at actions. And for the first time, the rules applied to everyone equally, even my mother. That realization stayed with me. I learned that boundaries aren't threats. They aren't ultimatums. They're explanations of where you end and someone else begins. Today, my life is quieter. Not perfect, but honest. I lock my door and know it will stay locked. I make choices without rehearsing how I'll justify them later. I exist without constantly preparing for someone else's reaction. My relationship with my mom still exists, but it exists within limits that keep me safe. And if those limits are ever crossed again, I know I'm allowed to enforce them, without guilt, without fear, without apology. If you're watching this and you've ever felt trapped by someone who says they love you, hear this clearly. You are allowed to protect yourself. You are allowed to ask for help. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do isn't staying, it's choosing peace. For me, that choice began the day I stopped asking for permission to live my own life. And I've never regretted it.